that feedback, and then we'll be good to go. Let's start with trade and industry, who are also today. We'll give you the first opportunity to comment on the issues that have been raised in the course of the day. Thank you so much, Mr. Panga.
Thank you, moderator. We have been
just a minute. Let's just be sure that that microphone is working. We've got people who are following this online, and it's important that they also follow it. Yes, please. Maybe you might also want to hold it a bit closer.
Yeah. Afternoon, colleagues. We have had a full day of their partnership issues around there, but also we've learned from Afreximbank themselves, getting financing and leveraging on their position as an African structure for financing private sector development, and how much they would wish to.
Indeed, and thank you for gracing this occasion. I'm sure that there might be a couple of questions coming your way, but if you could pass the microphone, or if I could invite Mr. Daniel Dunga now to weigh in. Mr. Daniel Dunga is a Chief Investment Officer for...
Development is monumental for Malawi, and a big thank you to EDF Afrexim. So Nico Asset Managers of the big from book. Obviously, it's not all cash bank waiting for projects. It is money that is invested in assets, but it is a book that is growing. And as you all appreciate, the coming in of the Pension Act in 2011, one of the objectives was to amalgamate national savings for national development, and we manage about funds into various investment opportunities. I think the issue that we've mentioned in the past is that there's an expectation from the public that we sit in our offices to write checks to whoever has a nice idea. No, really, we are representing pensioners who expect that their money will be invested safely and that their money will deliver a return. So rather than looking money aside for tomorrow, and so this is money that we cannot, quote unquote, play with. And we like to say this is almost sacred money that cannot be lost. Every coin must be accounted for. And I'm sure you appreciate that each project has risks embedded, in which case there's potential that you can invest money in a project and lose that money. And the question would be, well, didn't you foresee this? So the coming in of project preparation helps in a big way to de-risk opportunities, because by the time it comes to our desk, somebody else independent from us has taken an extensive look at that project, and they're bringing it to the table to say, if you put in your money here, you can make a return, and your money can be invested safely. And so we have lamented in the past to say, you see the way projects come to our table, especially public projects. You would see an advert in the paper to say, we are looking for student accommodation, 20,000 rooms, and there is a piece of land. And so our job should be to start by saying, okay, what size of room should we build? How much will students pay? And if they don't pay, if the university is closed, what happens? And so you spend 6 years just deciding whether you should invest. That time should be spent by somebody else, so that by the time that idea comes to our table, the paper says the room must be this size, the cost will be so much, the students will pay like this, and if the university is closed, this is how your risk will be managed. And we are just deciding whether this is a good investment or not. My last point, Joab, is to say, by the way, projects compete with each other. And we have other investment opportunities that we call risk-free. So for example, if the government says we're issuing a treasury note, we'll be paying 25%, we'll be paying every every 3 months we'll pay you interest, and in year 5 or in year 10 we'll pay you your principal. Risk-free, you don't have to think twice. You don't have to think too much. If the government says that today, that they're issuing a treasury note, tomorrow they'll get the money. So before we decide to put the money in a treasury note and put it in a student accommodation, we must answer the question why. Why is this one better than a risk-free government instrument? And so with that, project preparation helps to bring projects to bankability and easy decision-making by investment managers. Thank you.
I'm glad that you've touched on one of the issues that has come up, especially on the issue of well-prepared projects, because it looks like that's an area that Afreximbank and EDF is also trying to work on. Just a quick word on how already you think investors would be to invest in these projects, because as you indicated, some of the requests or the proposals that you get have not been very well prepared. Would an investor, institutional investor, be ready to invest in such?
If I understand the question, but if it's not fully prepared and de-risked, you'll be wondering, where is this 1.4 trillion sitting? Because you will not get a coin. I can promise you that. So, but if it's well prepared, yes, and it is giving you a premium return above the other investments, there'll be too much money fighting for your project. So it depends on the project itself. Investors are ready.
That answers the question. Thank you so much. I just wanted to drive that point home, that maybe sometimes the reason we are failing to develop as a country isn't because there are no opportunities, but maybe because we're not using those opportunities well enough. And preparation, as the old adage says, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Let me invite Ms. Olranti Doherty now to chip in. Please share with us some of the strategies that the Malawi financial system or the financial sector players can employ to access global source of project finance. What can we do?
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Let's have a microphone on, please. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Thank you. It's great to be on this panel with the distinguished co-panelists. And like we've said, for us at Afreximbank, industrialization is a key focus for us. We are very keen to support industrial development of industrial infrastructure. And this has been driven within the ambit of our industrialization and export development pillar. In that, we have sought to develop a lot of projects, initiatives, products, and programs. And one of our key focus in developing all this is to be able to support our member countries, including Malawi, in their industrialization agenda. And some of the things that we've put in place for the government of Malawi, private sector investors in Malawi, even the public sector in Malawi are some instruments of intervention that support the development of industrial projects. And when I mean industrial projects, I'm talking of a wide range of projects that cuts across agro-processing, that cuts across light manufacturing, that cuts across heavy industries, that cuts across even the services sector. And some of these instruments or tools of intervention that we have put or we place at the disposal of the government of Malawi, and even working with partner institutions in Malawi include our advisory services, our project preparation facilities, our project finance debt facilities, and also our trade finance facilities. We also support through our subsidiary company, Fund for Export Development in Africa, providing equity and quasi-equity instruments. We've long sought to partner financial institutions across our member countries when we intervene in developing projects or initiatives across these countries. And Malawi is not different. For example, my colleague Zito, when he was presenting, mentioned to you how we've sought to partner the Export Development Fund of Malawi in putting in place the project preparation facility, so that for every $1, both the EDF Malawi and Afreximbank invest in projects, we are able to leverage and attract at least between $10 to $30. That's not the only instance where we partner with local development financial institutions or commercial institutions. We can also partner with these institutions with regards to actual provision of actual debt financing, and I'm talking of long-term debt financing. I know a lot of us have said, oh, commercial banks are wary of providing financing to projects, and that most times maybe their tenures are within 5 to 7 years. But what we've done very successfully is to, partner with these commercial banks in funding some of these projects. We've been able to sort of use our convening power to bring them together. A case in point is in one of our member countries in the Francophone West Africa, where we were able to pull in 2 local financial institutions, commercial banks in the country, to support the development of a logistics park. We were able to provide financing, of course, up to the region of about 10 years and over 100 million. Of course, they may not be able to go through with our tenor or our ticket size, but they've been able to come in to partner us. Afreximbank being involved has given them a sort of comfort to be able to, provide funding. So we partner financial institutions in that. In all our trade financing facilities that we provide across the continent, we work through financial intermediaries. We work very closely with all the local commercial banks in Malawi, and we'll also continue to do so in providing trade finance interventions in the country. We also, through the Fund for Export Development in Africa, partner with local investment organizations in Malawi. And speaking to my good friend who is working with the asset management company in Malawi, there could be synergies for you and our Fund for Export Development in Africa to look at some of the industrial projects in the country and co-fund the ones that EDF and our Project Preparation Fund have made bankable. So we have a very huge history in supporting and collaborating with not just financial institutions, but even public sector-owned institutions on the continent in de-risking projects, in attracting financing into projects, and in bringing institutional investors into projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I will request that you pass the microphone to the next speaker, Mr. Panga. And as a ministry, I'm more interested in the issue of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I know the minister did touch on that, but I just wanted us to appreciate how you think project preparation would help Malawi yield optimal benefits from this arrangement of the African Continental Free Trade Area. How do you think we can make the most of this out of project preparation?
Yeah. Thank you, moderator. The African Continental Free Trade Area is certainly our biggest opportunity on the continent, because coming as it does, it now extends our reach to not just the SADC market or through the bilateral arrangements we have with our neighbors like Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. Also, we have a bilateral with them, but and the COMESA region. It extends to all the 54, if not 55, members across states across the continent. That becomes our new market. It's a market of, as the minister said, 1.3 billion people, and therefore has the most extensive of opportunities in terms of the variety of export products we could export there. But in light of the Afrexim opportunity that we are discussing here, specifically one would also be looking at investment, cross-border investment opportunities that could now flow into Malawi, that could originate from within and outside Africa, taking advantage of locating in Malawi, so that once products are produced here, they then become eligible to get into the Continental Free Trade Area. So it's a massive opportunity. It's actually, in my view, the largest market arrangement we are involved in outside the WTO. certainly it's a massive, and being land linked across the region, the continent, it means now that we can export from Lilongwe to Cairo. We could also export from Lilongwe to Dakar in Senegal, and vice versa. We also could be advantaged in sourcing raw materials, which were hitherto coming from further afield. We could be sourcing fuel from Gabon, because Gabon is in petroleum at the moment. We could be, Malawi could be positioned to export its rice to countries that don't grow rice across West Africa. That's just an example of an opportunity that could avail itself. That is how much of a prospect the CFTA does provide us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's hear from Mrs. Zandile Shawa. You're representing the Bankers Association of Malawi. An arrangement like this is definitely going to excite a lot of people, a lot of institutions, a lot of business personnel, and create a lot of demand for credit and project finance facilities. Now, from where you're standing as the Bankers Association of Malawi, how do you think banks can leverage this development to channel financing towards the productive real sector economy and complement government efforts as we count down to 2063?
Thank you very much for that question. But even as I address that question, I think it's important for us to look at how banks are lending, because I think it's a reflection of the country and what is actually available. When we look at where banks are actually lending has actually been increasing quite a lot over the past few years, and even last year grew by over 28% in this from banks. So the problem is not that banks are not lending, but where are we lending? What are we lending to? When you look at the breakdown of the lending that we're doing within banks, which is why this project it really emphasizes the importance of this particular project, you'll see that 27% of the lending is going towards community services and social, which is really personal lending, which is really consumptive lending and really hardly develops the nation. 23% of the lending goes to wholesale and trade, which is more import driven, and traders and people that are selling products that are in personal lending, wholesale trade. And then agriculture and forestry gets only 17%, and we say it's a major contributor to the GDP of Malawi, which really says at what level then that agriculture is taking place in terms of the value that is actually coming out of it. And then the other, when you include mining, construction, and a whole lot of others, it's only 33%. So now, when you look at the deficit in financing projects that will bring an impact within the banking sector, it's really because of one word: risk. Where is the risk? And so the role that Afrexim and EDF are actually playing in de-risking these projects is really critical for banks then to be able to start coming in. As already mentioned, that we take money from some and we give it to others, and we are stewards and we're expected to take care of people's money. So we have to be very careful. So that de-risking process is actually really critical. But I think further to that, because these projects I saw minimum 30 million, the capacity of local banks to do a $30 million project on their own is limited. We have to get into syndications. We have to use Afreximbank. We have to partner with other banks and other entities that can actually help us finance these projects. But the other opportunity I really see is downstream in terms of the financing businesses that are going to supply to these major projects, because those are the businesses where there's now a major off-taker in country that really de-risks the local Malawian suppliers who are also supplying to those projects. So I think if that project can come with a feasibility study of people that are actually going to be supplying to these projects, those are the projects that we'll actually want to sort of invest in. But we see a lot of opportunity just being unlocked, not just with the primary primary project that is actually coming there, but even the downstream projects and the feeder projects into that major project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to our panelists for laying a fertile ground for the discussion that we're going to have now. I would like to allow for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes to take some quick reactions from the audience that we have. We also have a virtual audience that is following this discussion on Zoom. We'll be taking their comments and questions as well. We are free to direct any of the questions to our panelists. And as we indicated, we also had previous presentations previously. Should there be any questions for those, I'll call them back later. But for now, I just wanted us to take advantage of the presence of these panelists in front, if we've got any question or comment for them. Let me see, by show of hands, anybody who wants to react to the statements they have made. Thank you. There is a hand up there, a rather reluctant hand up. Yes, now more energetic, and an even more energetic hand over there. If we could take the microphone around, please. Thank you. If the question is directed at any of the panelists, please be specific. But if it's just a general comment, it's also welcome. Thank you. We could just get one of the microphones from the panel. Oh, good one.
Hello, thank you, Job, for giving me the chance to ask, and thanks to the panel and all the presenters before that. My question is to the Bankers Association. I've always wondered why there is this mismatch which you have mentioned, that we say agriculture is the backbone of this country, and yet the loans, credit that go to that sector are not much. Now I'm looking at the introduction of the government project in mega farms that we are going to start. Is that going to make a difference to the banks? I'm asking that because the reasons why the banks shun, if I could say, the agricultural sector may be beyond what the managers or the agriculturists can do. Example, weather, which is beyond everybody. So maybe you'll be looking at the irrigated farms and things like that. But I'm wondering from your perspective whether these mega farms will make a difference, because we will need a lot of money from the banks. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next to you, Mr. Mopa, I wanted to also chip in.
Thank you. Thank you. My question goes to Dr. Jordan and Zito. First of all, starting with the latter. Zito, you talked about a resource ask or demand for infrastructure development in excess of about $7 billion for Malawi. And in addition to that, over and above $20 billion over and above the infrastructure development. Would you be kind enough to bring a breakdown, block-by-block analysis of which sectors would need a $20 billion investment? And to Dr. Jordan, you talked about industrialization elements which Malawi can leverage on. But I did not see anything else that would use the geographical position of Malawi as something else that you can leverage on to enhance commodity trading. In marketing, as you know, one of the P is place. And Malawi sits at the beginning of Southern Africa, as well as at the beginning of East Africa, which makes it central. Don't you think Malawi can leverage on the geographical position? And in that regard, use the resources around it into a continental trading platform, which by and large makes it to be the center of Sub-Saharan Africa. And you talked about digitalization, but you didn't go into subject. But did you consider the notion of GDR, Global Depository Receipt System? Because most of our commodities in Africa are traded in Singapore and Dubai, Hong Kong, Frankfurt, perhaps maybe New York and London. Why is it that we don't have a trading commodity exchange platform on the entire continent of Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. There's another hand up there. I will just use this opportunity to take all the questions addressed to our panelists as well as the previous presenters. And I will allow the panelists to respond, and I will call the presenters back on stage. So there are 3 hands that have gone up, and let's be concise and straight to the point in our asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. On a vote, maybe to answer your question why there's lack of energy in the audience, is maybe the audience has lacked lunch. But
the audience may be reassured to know that there will be a sumptuous lunch next door. Wonderful.
Now to my question, and it's directed to Afreximbank. Northern Malawi, Rumpi, Karonga, Chitipa, rich in steam coal. Very, very good for power generation. Can I get a clear statement from the bank that you're willing to support investment in coal power generation in terms of direct financing and things like partial risk guarantee? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next to you, there's a gentleman who also wants to ask. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My question, I want to focus on an area which is a bit silent in the discussion on the project preparation fund facility rather. This is an area, the cost to a project promoter or an investor. There was a talk about a sponsor contribution. What kind of a cost, what are the terms for somebody else to enter into such kind of accessing a facility? It may also be a limitation for a project promoter to access such facility. So that was a bit quiet, silent. So I thought maybe there's something that can be talked about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to find out from, I think both EDF as well as Afrexim, what's your appetite to invest across? Because we've been talking of regional. I'm saying this because most of the markets for the Malawi products are maybe across the border, or we are targeting exports. And we've learned from our colleagues in Tanzania who have been able to invest across in DRC. So I would want a little bit of light on your appetite to invest across. If there is a project or a program that benefits all of us between the country as well as our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's one last hand from the floor. I'll take that and I'll allow our panelists to respond to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question, I think you have talked much on agriculture and I think maybe a few on electricity and what have you. But I want to point out on the mining sector, because it's another part that also can contribute significantly to the development of this country. Because we don't have to put eggs in one pocket. As you know, we're having problems economically in this country. So I wanted to find out, maybe from Afreximbank, that is there any request that you have get from Malawi? Because we know that we have a potential mining at Kasia there. It's worth billions. I don't know if the government of Malawi has requested you to at least maybe assist in one way or another, because that opportunity, we don't have to miss it. We have seen that we had uranium, Malawi did not benefit anything from that one. And we are continuing suffering. So I think this is an opportunity that we can raise it to you. Maybe the members from the government can take note as well, that maybe they can see if they can help on that one. Because if we can use that one, I think the issue of Forex cannot be a problem. But if you wait for maybe taxi, then we'll see that these guys, they just use whatever the tricks and they fail to pay tax.
Okay.
So my interest is, I think the government should take an initiative to make sure that maybe something should come out from you through whatever you can agree, so that maybe you can benefit something from you. Because it's like if you can have maybe 40% from that one, from the government, then maybe you can have something out of it, and maybe we can realize something from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Please be quick.
Right, thank you. My question is directed to Mr. Dunga. Clearly from today's presentation, project preparation requires a lot of resources which locally may not be available. And my question therefore is, how prepared are you now to occupy that space for you, instead of waiting for a project proposal that has been prepared and completed, rather you get involved from the start up to the finish, so that you understand the whole process in terms of a particular project that you would want to partner a particular organization and or institution, yeah. So that instead of you investing in the traditional instruments like the treasury bills and the Arabian bills, you now get involved into other projects like the ones that are contained in the country's Agenda 2063.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that question is, how can you do what Afreximbank and EDF are doing? Or did we have to wait for them to come? That's just me adding a little salt to the injury there. I will allow the panelists to respond to those questions. We've got another question coming from the online platform. In order to transform Malawi into an industrialized upper middle income country, in your views, what are the sectors that have the highest potential in terms of industrial development and value added export? So since some of the questions were directed at some of the panelists, I'll allow them to respond, but I'll just start from that far end with Mr. Dunga to either respond to those questions, but also give your closing remarks in 2 minutes. We'll start from there, coming this way, please.
Thank you very much. How prepared are we to do project preparation? We're not prepared. I don't want to say we're not interested, but actually the law does not allow us to get involved in project preparation, in which case it was a gap that we were just looking at and wondering how to be dealt with. So we're actually excited that someone else is stepping in. And when someone else is stepping in, it's not for us to step in as well. It's really for us to create the space for them. And so EDF, Afrexim, Malawi is well known for talking and not doing. But we are waiting in the wings for this thing to actually take off, so that we don't have to worry about project preparation. We have tried. Most of the projects that we look at done by Nico, we have done internal project preparation, but that was before the law came into force, the Pension Act. But now we are not allowed. So I'm sure some of you that follow the NICO group, you know that the group has now created NICO Capital. NICO Capital is a company that is specifically mandated to do project preparation. But the moment you start to talk about $30 million, this is a project that will involve so many people, so it can't be an internal effort. So someone that sits in a place like EDF and Afreximbank and taking care of the interests of so many people is exactly what we've always needed. So we are happy to step back rather than to step in when others are already prepared to play this role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can pass the mic to Olrandi.
Thank you. Just to speak to that, I think there is a complementary role that they can play. Not specifically coming into the project preparation space and also providing project preparation support, but being poised to co-finance the projects that have been prepared and made bankable. That is where they need to focus and channel their energies and their support. So from the onset, they could be partners with EDF and the project preparation team at Afreximbank. They could start on that studying or looking at the projects that are being prepared, asking questions and ensuring that it fits within their investment criteria, so that at the end of the day, they can be institutional investors in those projects. Because guess what? Even if we finalize the development of these projects and they are bankable, and we attract international investors, regional investors, there will be need for homegrown Malawian investors, and that is where they come in. I would take on the second question that was posed to the bank. It's pertaining to the coal reserves in the northern part of Malawi. I just want to stress something here that we know that right now there's been a lot of comments and issues around coal being an unclean energy source. They need to phase it out. They need to not finance it. Most international finance institutions not even funding coal projects or even oil and gas fossil fuel projects. We have a different view and approach at Afreximbank. We view this climate issue in a very different perspective. We look at the continent and say to ourselves, what have we contributed to greenhouse gas emissions? The whole of the continent has only contributed 3% to greenhouse gas emissions. The continent, however, has been the one that has faced the major impact of the climate issue in terms of droughts, flood, and in terms of all the other, the desertification that has led to unrest in the Sahel region. So for us, we believe that if, you know, Africa has to be done, Africa has to be properly treated, there should be just transitioning. Every country on the continent has various reserves. And if those reserves can support their industrialization, can generate jobs for their people, can turn their lives around, there's need for just transitioning. There's need to help them carefully phase out those reserves. It's so unfair for us to say African countries should stop utilizing their reserves today. But what will be fair is to say, let's sit with these countries and let's work out a transitioning plan where they're able to leverage their existing resources and work towards a cleaner world. In that case, we are willing to support the government of Malawi in terms of utilizing its reserves, in terms of financing power plants that could be required, you know, even if they are coal-powered plants. As long as the projects are bankable, the most important thing to us is to ensure that we sit together and have a bankable project. But at the same time, we also realize that we need to work towards cleaning our energy sources on the continent. And that's why we asked that there should also be a transitioning plan, a transition towards cleaner sources of energy for us on the continent. On the third question that was posed to the bank on would we finance trade investments between Malawi and, say, DRC? I would say to you that is why we are created. The mandate of the bank is to promote intra and extra-African trade. The main or key strategic pillar of the bank is the promotion of intra-African trade and facilitating the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So it is what we live in Afreximbank to support investments between African countries. So if you as a Malawian investor have identified an investment opportunity in DRC, just know that Afreximbank is poised to support you. We want to promote intra-African trade, and we believe that by promoting intra-African trade, that is how Africa itself can be resilient, can guide itself against external shocks. So, you know, whatever investment prospects that Malawian investors have identified across the continent, Afreximbank stands ready to support you. We have an intra-African trade bank that provides funding, facilitation, advisory, and capacity building support just for intra-African investments. So please just know that you have a good partner in Afreximbank. Then I think the last question to me before I hand over, I don't want to hog the mic too much, is the one on the mining sector. I think it's very interesting. Throughout the discussions today, we've had a lot of insights into, you know, the opportunities available in northern Malawi. The Honorable Minister himself mentioned this morning about the potential to develop another industrial park in the northern part of Malawi. And today, just in this session, one of our colleagues here also mentioned the fact that there are opportunities to sort of access or develop the mining sector, particularly in the northern part of Malawi. I want to let you know that Afreximbank has a focus on supporting the extractives industry. And within the extractives industry is also a focus on supporting the mining capabilities of our member countries. But we don't want to just support your mining sector for you to mine those products and then send it to China for beneficiation. That is not our focus. What we've been pushing, the agenda we've been pushing, is whilst we support the mining sector, we also support the beneficiation of whatever minerals are mined within those countries for use either within the continent or outside of the continent. So we stand ready to support the mining projects, especially when it has a twist to beneficiation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Panga.
Thank you, moderator. I think I'll handle two questions. The one that came online, perhaps later on, but the first one that came rather as a comment and an advice on the mining. I think just to indicate that on the mining beneficiation issues, we are in discussion always with our colleagues in mining. They seem not to have been here today for the discussion, but we'll be getting in touch with them to just understand what is going on, and in terms of the actual, because they are the ones who have the regulatory mandate to license mining activities. But our remit in terms of industrial development extends to virtually all value addition, from general manufacturing, agro-processing, mining beneficiation, and so on and so forth, including services, in fact. That's how far we do go. The second question did pose to us was around the issue to do with which sectors should be prioritized. And I will again refer the online colleague who did make the question to back to the Agenda 2063, where we derive our present mandate, as it were, from, in terms of which sectors to pursue. As a national vision, the Agenda 2063 does place us within a nexus or a cluster that places industry and mining together. So naturally, one would think that agro-processing becomes our natural number one area. And this also does resonate with the presentation presentation by my old colleague Paul Jordan here earlier today, that indeed agro-processing is where our fortunes do lie. I think he also mentioned forestry, and I think for Malawi, forestry and forestry products is also an area of a lot of interest. Mining and mining beneficiation, obviously within mining, we are talking about things such as limestone mining, which results in 90% of cement is actually does come from limestone. And we understand from the data from our colleagues in mining, once again, that the country sits on considerable deposits of limestone. So we can develop those into clinker and mix it with gypsum, and then you have your bag of cement. We think we have considerable opportunities in that area. We also believe we have considerable opportunity as a country, derived from next one as well, that we should do, within agro-processing there was sugar and sugar products, so biofuels that coming from it is also a key area. And in addition to that, we are also talking about issues to do with the value addition for packaging and packaging products. That also do come as an ancillary to agro-processing. Because if you are talking agro-processing, then you have to package the materials into what could be presentable for the international market, and indeed, even for the local market. That's just as how much moderator the time can grant me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We know you're the ministry, so you possibly need a whole day just to unpack this. But thank you so much for trying to condense that answer in the shortest time possible. We'll finish with Bankers Association. Several questions directed at you. Looks like people are really curious. There's so many things that they would like to hear from you.
Thank you. In fact, the one question that I did pick up was the issue of the mega farms.
Yes.
And whether that actually addresses the problems in terms of the risks. And I think to a great extent it does, because if you're looking at irrigated farming, which is mechanized and insured crop, there's insurance there, it's a mega farm. There's no side selling, there's a structured market that is there, and there are off-takers. And even better, if the off-taker is even local, who then adds value to that product, it's even much better than that. And I think the mega farms addresses a lot of the problems that banks have been having with the agricultural sector, that has really raised the level of risk. I didn't hear any other question directed to the bank. Did I miss one? Job, you said there were several?
I thought I picked 2 or 3, but that you could possibly be right. Any other concluding remarks from you before we close?
Okay, no problem. I think the other important issue that I've picked up in terms of this project with EDF and Afrexim is the fact that they'll be addressing policy issues that prevent businesses from taking off. And I think that is really important, because we need to address the ease of doing business in Malawi. Because no matter what project, how good a project is, if it's going to be taking years to get certain things approved and certain things going, I think the power issue is being addressed, and those kind of basics to be in place. And then that also makes it easier for us as bankers to then finance when we don't see major roadblocks in whatever sector and whatever business people are going into. And I think the export, if we're looking at really financing exports, because obviously that risk does go up, by addressing the ease of doing business and people being able and registering exporters and formalizing that sector, I think it really will make a huge impact, and you'll see the lending going towards that increasing. But apart from that, I think we are really very supportive of this initiative, and what we are looking to do is to work closely with EDF and Afrexim early, so that we can then prepare ourselves in terms of the financing that is also required downstream, rather than when the projects are ready and then you find banks are actually not ready to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's give them a round of applause as they leave the stage. Thank you so much. There were a couple of questions that were directed at Zito and Dr. Jordan. I will invite the two to come in front now and respond to those questions. I know the energy levels are running low, but I think we're more interested in filling the country with development than filling our stomachs with food. much as that doesn't make the latter less important. Gentlemen, 2 questions directed at you. I would request that you respond to them in the most efficient and quick manner that you can. Thank you.
Okay. So the question was with regards to the total investment being about $20 billion. So first and foremost, when you read there's a World Bank report that was released last year. The report is named Mobilizing Long-Term Infrastructure Funding, and it's available online. And in that analysis, what you notice is that the World Bank approximated that Malawi needs about $7.6 billion. Okay. This $7.6 billion was primarily focused on energy, water, and sanitation. It excluded transport and logistics. Okay. And when we look at infrastructure, there are 2 broad buckets of infrastructure. You've got economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. So when you factor in transport and logistics, you also see that there's a gap about $2 to $3 billion that should come in. Then when you look at social infrastructure, there's also a correlation between when you invest in economic infrastructure, there's a ratio of about 1 to 2 to 1 to 3, whereby for you to maximize the investments, for you to sweat your capital, you need to have a certain amount of threshold. And in the Malawi 2063 plan, you actually see that the government actually states in its documents that they want to increase the GNI from about $600 to about $1,075. For them to achieve that, they'll need a certain amount of investment. So when you do that, you take the 7.6, you put transport and logistics, you look at certain sectors, which is what you wanted to know. Agro-processing, for example, focusing sugar, commodities, pulses, aquaculture, dairy, vegetables and fruits, livestock. What you realize is that all these numbers add up. Mining, ICT, healthcare, hospitality and tourism. You also have to be cognizant of the fact that Malawi is coming from a low base. So for them to drive up this GNI, then the significant amount of investment will be required. And that's what we came up with the $20 billion, all in. So it was an approximation of a study that was done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A thumbs up to say that's well answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I missed the name, but the man with the bow tie.
That is Bright.
Zikomo, for your question. Logistics hub. Yes, it's pretty well positioned. And a very sad part of our history is that it used to be for slavery. There was the route going across the lake and along the Rovuma. You can still track the route because of the palm trees that were planted by the traders taking Africans to Saidi in Zanzibar. So the hub then was in Kota Kota where the stockades were. And that because you could transport the goods, which were humans, from any point along the lake and also the rivers to the south. However, what was evil could be turned to good. It's a good place for a hub, but the problem is right now you have a hub and no spokes. The spokes are broken. So until we get the spoke to Nacala and the spoke to either Chindi or Beira or both working, and then a spoke also going into the copper belt, particularly a rail spoke, if that could be connected. And then one would have to put in the warehouses, because if you're going to have a logistics hub, that's warehouses. So that could all happen. But it can't happen before you put in the logistic infrastructure. I think it's a good idea. The second was the trading platform. Yeah, there is one. There is in Africa, the Future Agri-SA. It's actually a very good platform that trades in grains and other agricultural commodities in South Africa, a futures trading house. And it's been looked at. But the AU's Africa Commodity Strategy, which is really worth a read, calls for such platforms. So also Ethiopia, you missed, has put one in. But the government there did that on purpose. They said, we're losing too much because we do not have an agricultural trading platform. And the key is storage. You've got to put in the silos and the treatment to stop the pests. We lose anywhere between 20% and 50% of our crop to various pests, weevils and so on. So that's critical, and I think an excellent idea. What we recommended in the Africa Commodity Strategy is regional platforms. But just this relates to your logistics hub, you need then the warehousing and then also. Thank you.
Metals.
Metals, that's possible, but you'd want to put those closest to the production. So obviously for metals would be, if you look at the output, would be Johannesburg, where it's been looked at several times. But the mining companies themselves feel that would give government too much power. So they much prefer the Rotterdam warehouses and Shanghai and New York, NYMEX, etc. That's an ongoing battle, and I agree. I think that all mining law should say that X%, at least 20, must be traded locally for local beneficiators to use. Finally, I'd just like to say I have a question to Afreximbank. If you're going to fund or assist in the primary industries where we already have a comparative advantage, that I would strongly propose must be linked to indigenous capital. To be funding foreigners to come in and then take that surplus out in the forms of dividends and illicit financial flows, I think is loony. So if we're going to fund those basic industries, it should only be for African companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Afrexim? Okay, yes, please, Oluranti. Quick answer to that one.
So, thank you, Doc. While we were on the stage, we were speaking about the Malawian Asset Management Company, and there was something I said that was key. That to prepare this project, we will need institutional investors, we will need local investors from Malawi to join us in co-owning, in putting in equity, in putting in quasi-equity instruments into this, and this is key. And this is what we've done in most places where we've gone across to build industrial parks or special economic zones. We've partnered with local institutional investors. Some of them have been quasi-government agencies like the sovereign wealth funds of some of these nations, like the investment organizations in these nations, like the pension funds in these nations, when they see that this project is bankable. And that's why I'm saying to the pension funds in Malawi now that don't wait for us to finish. Let's start these discussions now. Let's start looking at this. Come in and be institutional investors, because if we don't, then we'll be building these things for foreigners to come in, enjoy, reap the benefits, and then take the funds out of Malawi. Investors or institutional investors in Malawi. Second, within the region, African institutional investors, because don't forget that we are also promoting intra-African investments. So where we are able also to attract investors within the continent, we bring them in. Then we go for the international investors who are also good to have, especially at the early stages of this project, to be able to boost confidence that the projects have been well prepared. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much. A couple of more questions. I think maybe EDF could just take those, and I promise this will be the last. Especially, some people want to know, and I'll just read them, and you can tackle them as you go. Can Malawi be a center of sub-Saharan Africa? Somebody wants to know. Is Afreximbank willing to support local power generation? A very timely question, looking at the time, the kind of times we're in. What are the costs involved, owner contribution and others, and what is the appetite of EDF and Afreximbank to invest across the country? Is Afreximbank supporting any mining project? And how prepared are institutional investors to fund project preparation? I think that was tackled along the discussion that we had. And we have also just looked at the sectors that have got the highest potential to industrialize. Afreximbank, maybe you might pick one or two questions from that list. I will invite EDF to maybe just come and chip in quickly.
Thank you very much for those questions. Yes, we do support energy projects in the energy sector in Malawi. As we speak, we actually have a pipeline of various transactions that we are reviewing in the hydropower sector. So we are working with the developers and sponsors so that we can get this over the line and get our final approval. So that's work in progress. With regards to mining, yes, we do have mining projects we're looking at. Again, because of confidentiality, I cannot disclose out in public, but we do have a pipeline of projects that we're targeting. And with regards to minimum eligibility criteria to tap into the project preparation facility, we typically expect at least the developer should demonstrate capacity to invest at least 30% of the project preparation cost. And definitely that's just more like skin in the game as a demonstration of the commitment.
Thank you. And Mr. Chancellor, maybe you might wish to handle some of the questions from EDF. I think some of them be well handled by you. There's a microphone here that you can use.
Thank you, Joe. I think all those questions have been answered, except to just stress in terms of, is this a grant? People want to know, are you doing a grant? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no. So this project preparation facility is a loan. And as you're aware, development is about risk sharing. The part that is best placed to assume risk must assume risk. If a sponsor does not put in anything, it means that lenders own everything about the company. And it not operates like that. They have to have their skin in the game. They have to assure us that they're not going to walk away. So that unfortunately, that is something we cannot deal away with. I wanted to stress that it's a loan.
Thank you. Yeah. Very important indeed. And on that rather sad note, we have to dismiss our presenters. So it's important to know that this is not a grant, it's a loan, and that also helps you prepare adequately on how you want to access it and how you plan to repay it. Thank you so much, Zito and Dr. Jordan. Dr. Jordan is clearly has a wealth of knowledge in this sector, and to use an appropriate word, he's a mine of knowledge, and possibly you might want to have more conversations with him, and of course, Afreximbank through Zito and the rest of the team. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You can go and resume your seats. Let's give them a round of applause. They have done an impressive job. Thank you.